Man Called Ransom, Chapter 1, The Spark. Bo Ransom came into Carver's Ridge with the wind at his back and the dust on his boots. It was a kind of town you passed through, not the kind you stayed in, unless you had nowhere else to go. The ridge itself loomed to the north, jagged as an old wound, and the town clung to its southern slope like a stubborn scab. His horse was a rangy bay, ribs just showing under the hide. The saddle was worn but clean, his coat long enough to hide the revolver at his hip, and the look in his eyes was the sort that kept the questions short. He rode in slow, letting the town look at him before he looked back. The main street was quiet, not empty, but quiet, in a way a church is after bad news. A few men leaned outside the saloon, eyes narrowed and voices hushed. Dogs slept under a wagon axle. And at the far end of the street, framed against a bare patch of sky, stood a gallows. That is what caught Bo's eye. The platform was freshly built cut lumber, pale and sharp-edged. The rope hung neat, not swinging, just waiting. And under it stood a boy of maybe 14 or 15 years, thin as a rail and just as still. Hands bound in front, eyes fixed on something past the horizon. Bo rode closer. The crowd around the gallows was small, 10, maybe 12 townsfolk. A man in a dark coat stood on the platform beside the boy, reading from a folded piece of paper in a voice too loud for the silence around him. Bo didn't dismount. He just sat there, watching, until the name rang out. "Elias Kane, having been found guilty under the articles of petty theft for the third time." Bo's voice cut across the man's reading. "Third time's the rope now, is it?" Heads turned. The man on the platform paused. Bo dismounted slow, the reins looped over a nearby hitching post, and stepped forward with a kind of calm that made men nervous. "Who's the judge?" he asked. A wiry man near the front of the crowd spat into the dirt. "Town council acts as judge. Maddox signs off on it." "Maddox is sheriff?" "Oh, Maddox owns the land, the mine, the store, the freight house, and the gallows." Bo looked up at the boy, Eli. The rope hung close enough to cast a shadow on his shoulder. He turned to the man with the paper. "And you are?" "Deputy Registrar," the man said, puffing up. "I've got the authority to—" Bo stepped closer. "That kid steal a horse?" "No." "A gun?" "No." "He kill a man?" "No, sir." Bo looked at the rope. "Then you don't have the authority to hang him." A murmur rippled through the crowd. The deputy flushed. "He's been warned, and this is the law." Bo's coat shifted as he moved, just enough to reveal the worn leather of his holster. "Some laws," he said, "ought to be broken." The deputy hesitated. The silence stretched. Bo turned back to Eli. "What'd you steal, kid?" Eli's voice was hoarse. "Bread. Some jerky, once a knife, but I gave it back." Bo nodded. "And you got folks?" "No, sir." "Anyone to speak for you?" "No, sir." Bo looked at the crowd and left a quiet sigh. "Well, he's got one now." There was more silence. Then a heavy voice came from behind the crowd. "Let him go." The crowd parted, and a man stepped forward. Heavy coat, clean boots, hat pulled low. His mustache was neat and his eyes were not. "Maddox," someone whispered. Bo sized him up. The man had not just weight in his shoulders, but in the way that others kind of leaned back when he passed. Maddox looked Bo over, then turned to deputy. "Unbind the boy." But do it." The deputy fumbled with the rope. Eli stumbled as it loosened, and Bo helped him down. Eli didn't thank him. He just kind of stood there, silent. Maddox stepped forward. This town's not your business, stranger. Bo didn't blink. Well, it is now. Maddox didn't move. His coat shifted slightly in the wind, but the man himself stood like a carved stone. Bo held his gaze. He didn't posture, didn't reach for the gun, didn't raise his voice. He just stood between the boy and the rope and waited. Maddox finally broke the stare. We don't take kindly to men meddling with our order. I didn't see any order, Bo replied. I saw a boy about to hang for being hungry. You see a thief, and thieves learn one way or another. Well, maybe. But the way you teach seems to leave a lot of empty shoes. Someone in the crowd coughed and stepped back. Maddox gave a thin smile. You'll be gone by morning. Bo shrugged. Maybe. With that, he turned. Come on, Eli. The boy hesitated, glancing at the deputy, at Maddox, and then followed Bo down the street without a word. No one stopped him, and they didn't even speak till they cleared the ridge. The sun had started its slow slide westward, and the air had gotten that dusty gold tint that meant it's going to be cold again by nightfall. Eli walked a few paces behind Bo, limping slightly. Where are we going? He finally asked. Bo looked back. Someplace quiet. You still hungry? Eli didn't answer, but the way he looked at those saddlebags said enough. Bo nodded towards a copse of junipers at the base of the rocky knoll. We'll camp there. You build a fire. I can try. Bo tossed him a flint, a steel striker, then try. By the time Bo unsaddled the bay and hobbled her to graze, the boy had a flame going, small but alive. Bo pulled out a pair of tin cups, a handful of dried beans, and a scrap of bacon. He let Eli fill the pot at a nearby seep, and then let it boil over the fire. The boy watched the water as if afraid it might vanish. Bo sat, stretched out his legs, and let the silence settle. After a time, Eli spoke. You from around here? No. You lawman? No. Why'd you help me? Bo stirred the pot with a stick, because it was wrong. Eli chewed on that, lips pressed together. My ma used to say that too, but she's been dead 3 winters now. I tried to stay with my uncle, but he's mean when he's drunk, and he's always drunk. Bo nodded, not pushing. Eli kept going. I stole the bread from the store after a week of no food, and they caught me the first time. Mr. Maddox said I was lucky he didn't cut my hand off. Said he was merciful. Bo didn't reply. Eli looked up. You gonna leave tomorrow? Bo took a long breath. That depends. On what? On whether I can live with myself if I do. Eli was quiet for a long time after that. Night settled in. The stars were sharp, and the fire cast long shadows on the stone around them. Bo unrolled a thin blanket and leaned back against his saddle. Eli curled up in the opposite side of the fire, one hand tucked under his cheek. Bo took out a small Bible, not much bigger than his hand. The leather was cracked and the edges worn. He flipped it open, ran a finger along the pages like there was something living. He didn't read aloud. Instead, he looked up at the stars. Lord, he whispered, I didn't ask for this one, but you know I can't leave it lie. The wind answered softly through the junipers. At first light, Eli was up before Bo. He had the fire stoked and was pulling water for a new pot of beans. You planning on adopting me or something? He asked without turning around. Bo raised an eyebrow. You asking? Eli smirked a little. Just wondering what a man like you gets out of dragging a stray around. Bo stood, stretching. Well, maybe you ain't a stray. Maybe I am. Bo saddled the bay and adjusted the gear. I'm going back into town, he said. Not for long, just to listen. Eli's face tightened. You shouldn't. That right. They don't like folks looking too close. I noticed. Then why go? Bo looked down the ridge towards the town. Because if I don't know what I'm dealing with, I can't decide what to do about it. Eli kicked a rock. What did they kill you? Then don't let 'em hang you next. Bo walked into Carver's Ridge just after midday. He didn't take the main road, instead circling south along the back trail through tall grass and half-dead cottonwoods. The town looked different from this angle, smaller, less like a place with power, more like a thing held together by fear. He left his horse tied behind the blacksmith's barn, where the noise of a hammer and an anvil would cover anything that shouldn't be heard, and then he walked. No badge, no weapon showing. Just boots, dust, and a face folks wouldn't forget, but couldn't quite place. The saloon was half full, mostly with miners and hired hands. Bo didn't go in, though. He lingered by the freight depot instead, watching. Maddox's freight office was painted green with white trim, clean and polished like a preacher's lie. Inside, Bo could see a desk, a safe, and a man with a narrow hat and ledger fingers. Not Maddox, one of his lieutenants probably. Bo stepped into the barber's next door. Man inside looked up from stropping his razor. "Cut or shave?" Bo sat. "Just a wash and a few questions." Barber paused. "Oh, that's a dangerous combination in this town." "I'm feeling dangerous." Man looked over again. Something in Bo's tone made him reconsider. "You hear about the mine?" he asked, lathering a cloth. "No." "Why are you here?" Bo shrugged. "Saw something I didn't like." "Well, that's most things if you keep looking." Bo let the cloth steam against his neck. "Tell me about Maddox." The barber's hand slowed. "What do you want to know?" "Everything you'll tell a stranger with a loaded gun." Barber gave a tight smile. "That'd be not much, but I'd say this Maddox didn't build this town, but he bought it. Every man with a debt owes him. Every widow without a husband's rent from him. Even the preacher uses a pulpit Maddox paid for." "And what about the law?" "Oh, the last sheriff got himself dead. No one's replaced him." "How long ago?" "2 years." Bo nodded. "Oh, that long and no one stood up?" "A couple tried. There's crosses up on that ridge if you want to see 'em." Bo stood, dropping 2 silver coins on the counter. "Thanks for the wash." Barber didn't even smile. "Be careful, stranger." I already wasn't. Bo slipped back out the way he came. By dusk, he was a shadow across the ridge again, kicking dust and dry brush from his path until he reached camp. Eli laid out a circle of rocks, started a fire, and caught a rabbit. He was dressed and roasting on a spit when Bo arrived. "You live?" "Barely." Eli passed him a piece of rabbit leg. "You learn anything?" Bo chewed. "Enough." "Like what?" "Like Maddox doesn't own the town, he owns its fear, and there's a big difference." "Oh, not to them." "To me." They ate in silence for a while, but when the moon rose and cast long fingers through the grass, Eli finally spoke again. "I want to help." "You are." "I mean more than just not dying." Bo nodded slow. "Then you'll need to understand something. This ain't a fair fight." Eli's voice was hard. "I'm not expecting fair." Bo looked across the fire. "And you need to decide what you're willing to lose. Because once you make that choice, there's no going back." Eli didn't flinch. "I already lost everything. What's left is mine to spend." Bo gave a quiet nod, then pulled a piece of folded paper from his coat and laid it beside the firelight. "What is that?" "It's a map of sorts." Eli leaned closer. "It shows who Maddox has wrapped around his finger. The stores, the stables, stagecoach, even the preacher." "You think we can take him down?" Bo didn't answer. Instead, he said, "Tomorrow we start asking questions. Quiet ones." They rose before the sun and moved like smoke. Bo taught Eli how to listen without being seen, where to stand in a shadow, and how to read the faces from across the room, how to tell when a silence meant danger. Eli took to it quickly, like a stray learning the rhythms of a new street. They drifted through town like ghosts. Bo questioned a man outside the mill who'd once worked security at the freight house. Eli played dumb outside the stables, overhearing more than anyone meant for him to, and by noon they had more names. One of them was Garrett Teller. You sure? Bo asked. Eli nodded. He runs supplies out past the ridge. He takes cash straight from Maddox. People say he makes people disappear. Bo looked towards the hills. Then he's next. They found Teller sharpening a scythe behind his shack, just outside of town. The man was big, slow-moving, eyes like pond water. He didn't reach for the rifle near the door when Bo and Eli stepped into view, but he didn't have to. Men like him had already done their worst and didn't expect to be challenged. You looking for work? Teller asked. No, Bo said. Looking for answers. Well, that's so. You move freight for Maddox? I move what I'm told. Keep my head down. Like when Maddox sends you after debtors? People who stop paying? Teller squinted. You're not from here. Nope. You should be gone by now. Oh, that's funny, Bo said. That's what Maddox said. Teller leaned against the handle of the scythe. You came out here to threaten me. No, I'm just telling you what's coming. Teller tilted his head. There's a tide shifting, Bo said. You can ride it or you can get swept. You think the folks will ride us up? Against Maddox? Not yet, but soon. Teller chuckled. I've heard that before. Never seen it happen. Bo stepped forward, close enough that their boots nearly touched. You'll see it now. They left him standing in the dust, scythe forgotten at his side. That night, Eli was quiet. He worked his knife against a stick, carving shapes without meaning. Bo watched him from across the fire. You all right? He asked. Eli didn't look up. You really think we can change anything? I think we can light a fuse. Rest is up to the town. What if they don't want it? And it burns anyway. Truth has a way of doing that. Eli dropped the stick. You ever been wrong? Bo smiled. More than once, but never about men like Maddox. The next day, the church doors were open. Bo stepped inside alone, and Eli stayed back watching the horses. The preacher was a thin man with calloused hands and permanent worry behind his eyebrows. You here to pray? He asked. Eventually. First I want to know if your sermons are yours or Maddox's. The preacher flinched. What are you saying? I'm saying there's good men under bad boots all over this town, and you have a pulpit. That pulpit was paid for by the man you're talking about. It doesn't mean your soul is. Preacher looked at the worn wood, at the simple stained glass, at the faded cross above the altar. You planning something? Bo nodded. Yeah. Preacher looked down. You'll need more than fire and steel. I'm counting on it. Preacher said. If it starts, if the people follow, what then? Bo didn't turn around. And you preach truth, even if it hurts. The wind came up strong that night. Bo stood on the ridge just outside camp, coat snapping behind him, hands buried deep in his pockets. Below him, the town flickered with lanterns and fear. He could see the black shape of the freight office, the pale slant of the gallows, and the dim flicker of oil lamps behind drawn curtains. Eli joined him without a word, standing just off his shoulder. They'll come for us, Boy said after a while. Bo nodded. Eventually. You think we'll make it? Bo looked out over the town like a man counting pieces on the chessboard. It doesn't matter. Eli turned. It does to me. Bo slightly smiled, and without warmth he said, Then we'll try. They returned to town 3 days later. Not to fight, not yet, but to sew. Bo spoke with the blacksmith. Eli sat with the butcher's daughter and let slip of what he seen of Maddox's men. They moved through the town like water finding cracks, slow and steady. The message was simple. You're not alone. The response was slower. Some slammed doors, others listened with empty eyes, but a few, just a few, nodded. That was enough. On the fourth day, Maddox made his move. Bo and Eli were eating cold beans behind the livery stable when the sound of hooves came sharp and fast. 4 riders, spurs jingling like warning bells. One of them dismounted and kicked open the saloon doors. Inside, shouting, glass breaking, a body thrown into the street. But Bo didn't move. Eli tensed. "They're making a show." Bo stood, dusted off his hands, "and we'll show 'em back." He walked straight into the saloon. The air inside reeked of sweat and spilled whiskey. One of Maddox's men was shouting at the bartender. Another was kicking a man already bleeding on the floor. The third turned when Bo entered, his hand drifting towards his belt. "Easy," Bo said. "I'm not here to die today." "Well, that's too bad," the man growled. "You've been stirring folks up." Bo just kept walking. "Maybe they need stirring." But Bo's revolver cleared leather before the man's hand touched iron, and the saloon froze. "I said," Bo repeated, "I'm not here to die." The man swallowed hard and stepped back. Bo holstered slow. "You go tell Maddox he's got 2 choices. He can live in this town like a man, or burn it down and live in the ashes." The man looked at the others, but none of them moved. Bo turned and walked out. That night Eli asked, "You think he'll listen?" "No," Bo said, "but the people will." "And when he fights?" Bo stared into the fire. "Then I will fight back." Eli was quiet a while, but then he asked, "Why? Why you? Why this place?" Bo didn't answer right away, but when he did, his voice was soft. "'Cause I seen too many towns fall to men like Maddox, and I just kept riding. Kept telling myself it wasn't my war, and I didn't know 'em nothing, but maybe I did. Maybe God gives us fire for a reason." Eli leaned in. "You were a soldier?" "Still am," Bo said. "Just a different war now." As the flames cracked and the moon climbed, Bo opened his Bible and turned to a blank page in the back. He wrote one sentence. "The fire has started." He looked out across the ridge. Carver's Ridge slept, but not peacefully. The spark has been struck, and Bo Ransom, rough, quiet, haunted Bo, wasn't going anywhere. Not until this fire had run its course.